Day one of the NFL draft in the books, and the Bills do indeed make a pick, and it's for a position of need. I'm Kevin Carroll. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone podcast, everyone, alongside Andy Young as usual. Andy, the position, one we had talked about, one you might have talked about more than I did going into the draft. Go figure that. But, yeah, they do grab a cornerback with the 30th pick, Maxwell Hairston.
And this is a guy who I wasn't sure was going to be available at pick number 30. So I had kind of moved on from him. I liked him as a prospect, but thought Max Hairston out of Kentucky, the fastest man at the NFL scouting combine, ball hawk, aggressive style. I thought some team maybe in the earlier 20s would jump up and grab him. So I kind of thought he might have been out of play by the time the Bills got around to picking at number 30, but it's a little bit of a departure for them from the type of guy they've picked. I thought Trey Amos out of Ole Miss was going to be a much safer, high-floor, safe pick for the Bills, the type of cornerback they like. This is a guy who is all about the speed, the flash, the aggression, the big playability, going after the football, can get beat on double moves, could miss tackles at times. But this addresses an absolute need, and it addresses a need in a way that the Bills have not had, which is to bring speed to their team, especially on defense. Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, all offseason have either been asked and answered or talked about it themselves, the need to add more speed and more playmakers to this team. And I think Max Hairston certainly does that, which is not necessarily a high risk, high reward, but he's a little more of a risky prospect in terms of he goes for the big play, and that's something the Bills haven't had.
4.2840, Andy. That's fast at the NFL Combine. And you mentioned Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott talking about needing speed on defense, and McDermott saying leading up to the draft that, yeah, they want speed, but they need to get a football player. And it seems like it's there. Like they mentioned the size, his issues tackling, in the run game, like stopping the run. But to me, that seems like that's stuff that can be coached and worked on in the weight room and get him where he needs to be in the NFL. He's still a young guy. Mm-hmm. So you wanted that speed. You got that speed, which I can't wait to see how this plays out during the season. From what you see on tape, from what you hear about what this guy can do, you hear his ability to jump routes and take off and get the interception, get to the end zone. Even with that, I think you asked the question to Brandon Beane following the pick about his ability to not just pick the ball off, but return it for 6 points. And he said during his post-game thing, his job is to get the ball back to Josh Allen, which I loved hearing.
And he also said, I'm thinking every time I get the ball, I'm going to score. Yeah. I'm going to give the defense or the offense a break. Let him sit on the bench a little longer.
Right.
Just a great attitude about the whole thing. And Brandon Beane was quick to point out that when you draft guys like this, you want to make sure, as you alluded to, Kevin, that they're not just a track star, right? They're not just a guy who has straight line speed and can get ready for an NFL combine and run really fast. The speed also shows up on tape too. Brandon Beane even alluded to a particular play against a very fast receiver in Isaiah Bond from Texas last season. And in my draft profile that I did prior to this on Max Hairston that was on SpectrumLocalNews.com, shameless plug.
You got to do it.
I showed that particular play where Isaiah Bond from Texas, the wide receiver, runs a post towards the middle of the field into the end zone, and Hairston has such great recovery speed that he got beat a little bit, but it was able to track it down and knock the ball down and make a big play to stop a touchdown in the end zone. So this is a guy who is absolutely a football player. He's not just a speed guy. He's brash. He's got some bravado, which is cool. And he's got a lot of traits that you want to see along with the speed. Yes, he needs to work on his tackling, but Brandon Beane said he's a willing tackler. Mm-hmm. He needs to get a little bigger. Actually said that he got big boyed was the way Brandon Beane phrased it at times in terms of missing tackles or even getting run over. I think he weighed in at 183. Mm-hmm. Now he's already up to 192. Beane said they'll get him in the weight room, get him stronger. And that's, to me, secondary to being able to lock somebody up in man or zone coverage, scheme versatility, really big with this guy because he has the speed, the twitchiness, the quickness, the athleticism to play man-to-man defense, which is something the Bills have not really had, but shown that they need to have at times when you're playing different teams in the playoffs and you need to go to man coverage. That was the thing we talked about with Kaiir Elam.
I was just going to get into that.
And this certainly is not the same player as Kaiir Elam. Kind of a different cat altogether, and the ability for him to both read with his eyes and play zone and also have that quick reaction stuff to play man coverage is going to unlock some versatility in the Bills' defense, and it goes to a point that we've made all offseason. They're not overhauling things, the Bills, but you can see them kind of, all right, we've done things this certain way for a long time, and it's got us to this certain ceiling, right?
Yeah.
Like divisional round, AFC Championship. What's the next little tweaks we can make to get better as teams evolve, as they evolve? And this might be part of that. Typically, they've loved a little bit bigger guy or a guy who's really solid in tackling and just kind of like a solid, good player. This is let's hit a home run kind of pick.
You mentioned Kaiir Elam. I'm just going to jump back to that for a bit because when the Bills went with Kaiir Elam in the first round years ago, the question was after that, he's not a fit for the Bills defense. And that Christian Benford, who they picked later, was coming from a scheme that better matched what Sean McDermott and the Bills defense does. And that's how it played out. You look at how Kentucky's defense was run, more similar for Hairston coming to the Bills defense than what it was for Kaiir Elam coming in when they drafted him. So for those out there panicking, Bills went with another cornerback in the first round that there are questions about. I think the questions, you're right, are completely different, not comparable, and this is a better fit. And when you're trying to match speed against teams like the Chiefs and other teams in the AFC, this is a guy, you want in.
It's a chess piece. It's a different kind of player that they can utilize utilize in different ways than they've been able to in the past. So if you need to lock a guy up on an island and let him run man and stay with a guy and run all over the field with him, that's great. Or you can put him in off coverage, off man or zone, and let him read and react. That versatility is big. That's something that we didn't really ever see with Kaiir Elam, where he was really locked into being that press man corner.
Mm-hmm. Talk about defensive line. I was big on going defensive tackle or edge going into this. And, question pops up. Why didn't they go defensive line in the first round when we talked about what the Eagles did to the Chiefs and whatnot, but you went with a cornerback? But I say that it goes hand in hand when you're trying to stop a power. If you have a lockdown corner, that's going to give a little extra time for the D-line to get to the quarterback. So the more I looked at this pick and sat on it overnight, I thought D-line was the way to go. This is good. There's still time to build the D-line with round 2 coming up.
Well, and in the first round, the D-line, especially the tackles, dried up.
Yeah.
So Kenneth Grant went to Michigan. He was went to Michigan, went to the Dolphins, all the way up at pick 13. That was a popular, maybe the most popular mock draft pick to the Bills. So Kenneth Grant, the big, hulking, one-technique defensive tackle, he's off the board. Then Walter Nolan, pick 16, goes to the Cardinals, another beast of an athlete going off the board. And then you have Derek Harmon, who was my favorite pick for the Bills defensive tackle. He went to the Steelers at 21. Boy, what a perfect fit that's going to be. He's going to be their next Cam Hayward, right?
Right.
Their next beast on the front line. And then you even had the cat from Ohio State. So, there's Tyleik Williams, went to Detroit 2 picks ahead of the Bills. So, to me, the value in defensive tackle dried up. Mm-hmm. So, you go to the next position. Whether they liked any of those guys or not, we will never know as first-round picks.
Right.
But to me, that dried up. So, you got to go with the next thing. That's corner. And Hairston, to me, I think, probably had a first-round grade for them, or they probably wouldn't have done it.
Well, didn't Brandon Beane actually say that after that it matched up for them? That's why they didn't trade
They're going to
up.
say that.
But, I mean,
yeah.
that's why they didn't trade up or trade back, because they waited to see if that player was still there, and he was.
Right.
Whether that's BS or not.
Right. Everybody's going to say we had him a first-round grade. Right.
We'll never know.
But like the year that they traded up for Kaiir Elam, there was a run on corners. They got worried. The Chiefs took Trent McDuffie, who's been a great player, and then they said, oh, man, this is our last guy in that tier that we like. We got to go up and get Kaiir Elam. Well, this sort of fell to him, and it's the first time in the last 4 years that they didn't make a trade in the first round. So I think that shows you that either they didn't have any trade partners or they didn't need to make a trade, because this was a guy they liked and had a good grade on and thought, wow, he's here, let's do it.
Hairston missed a few games last season, missed some time. Any concern there?
I'm not a doctor, but I do play one on TV.
Now play one.
And Brandon Beane said that that's cleared up. There's no concerns there. So trust what they think, I guess, that the shoulder is good to go. And it cost him 5 games, but sounds like he's okay off of that, at least from the Bills' perspective.
And now we look at the cornerback room now, Andy, with him, Dane Jackson back, Trey White back, Elam gone, Rasul Douglas, I don't see him coming back at all. Do we have, for the Bills, a better cornerback room? Are they set up better going into this season with who they have than what they had last year?
Yes, unequivocally. So you have an absolute twitchy, young, fast, athletic dude. And then you've got the veterans who can compete for that starting job and also mentor this young, fast, athletic, twitchy dude. So you've got Trey White back, and who knows what he's got left in the tank, but he's there, and he's certainly wants to be there and knows the system and is a veteran guy and has been a leader. And Dane Jackson, same regard. He's a guy who started games for them. Veteran presence, knows the system. So you combine that room, and Jamarcus Ingram, too. Let's not count him out. He'll be in that mix, I think, to compete for that job as well. He offers them some versatility in what he's able to do. So I think unequivocally they've improved. Douglas just wasn't the same last season that he was the prior year when they traded for him, and he kind of was like a revelation, picking off the ball and playing that. He's been that classic zone coverage corner that they like. And so if you can pair the speed and athleticism with the veteran leadership of those other guys that I mentioned, and oh, by the by, you've got Christian Benford, who's ascending and in many eyes could be a future All-Pro, I think that cornerback room now looks really good to me. Now, I think there's still more room for depth, younger depth, because how long are you really going to rely on Trey White and Dane Jackson? But you've got that young guy in place to either come in and win that starting job right away or work his way into the lineup throughout the season. Maybe there's some sort of rotation there. They've done that at times in the past. If you remember, Kaiir Elam, that rookie year, did get some playing time, right? And Benford got some playing time, and Dane Jackson, different guys were in there, especially when Trey White was hurt. So I think there's some opportunity there to either ease him in the lineup or let him go out in training camp and win the job. But, yeah, I do think they're in a much better spot cornerback-wise. I still think they could draft a couple of younger guys in the late rounds this season, next year, whatever, to replenish that depth. But I do like where they are now.
Andy, this time last year, we were talking about Keon Coleman and his personality when he entered the Bills facility, and the big yellow jacket and the cookie eating and the this and the that. You have a
Tiger wish he could.
Right.
Yeah.
You have a big personality again with Max Hairston. Big last night at the draft, high-fiving everyone as they went by him, getting picked ahead of him, and then his whole reaction on getting drafted by the Bills. So now you have another big personality guy who is a big player and a big first-round pick for the team.
Yeah, and just seems like a team guy, a guy who's happy for other cats. Like, he's watching these other guys get picked ahead of him in the first round, and he's happy as can be. He's the first guy to go dap them up when they get picked in the green room at the draft in Green Bay. So, that's just a small thing, and it is what it is. But Beane said that he's a really likable guy, that his teammates liked him, and we'll get into that, I think, in a second here, because he played with Ray Davis.
Right.
And he was really excited. He said that his first formal meeting at the Combine was with the Bills and thought that was awesome. I asked him about his impression of watching the Bills just as a fan and seeing them, and he actually said that Ray Davis got him tickets, and he went to the game in Detroit, and he watched Josh Allen put on a show and thought, man, I want to play with this quarterback. That's going to be awesome. So that was really cool to hear. And I guess Brandon Beane talked with Ray Davis prior to the pick, and Ray said, yeah, this is a good dude, and he vouched for him, and by all accounts, and I got to know Ray just a little bit and doing some one-on-one interviews with him. Great dude, awesome head on his shoulders, been through a lot, so I think that matters to them.
The relationship on football teams is kind of fun at times. Like, you would think if you're a running back, you're buddies with the wide receivers and the quarterbacks and stuff, but that's usually not how it works out. You just form friendships. His connection with Ray Davis, he even went as far as saying, I'm moving in with Ray Davis when I move out there.
Yeah, he said, tell Ray Davis I'm moving in, right? So that's really cool. And that certainly helps when you know somebody and you've got a connection with. When you're moving to a new city and you're a rookie, you're a first-round pick, there's going to be expectations. Guys like you and me are going to be asking him questions, and if it doesn't go well all the time, we're going to be asking him questions. Like, think about this. Brandon Beane said that because he plays with such speed and ferocity and aggression that he's susceptible to a double move. We'll say that happens in a preseason game, or we see it happen a bunch in camp, and we start asking him questions. Well, that can get to a guy, especially a young guy. But if you've got a friend there, Ray Davis, who's been through it a year now and kind of understands how it goes, that's going to help you along in that process to just acclimate to being a pro and acclimate to a new city and a new team.
So overall, I like the pick. What do you think?
Yeah, cornerback to me, cornerback or D tackle was my number one position. And like I said, I thought Hairston, because of what he did at the Combine, was rising up the boards. I didn't know that he would be there. I would have been happy with Trey Amos too. I could have seen them going edge at that position. There were a couple of edge guys that fell as well. So to me, this is a winner. We'll see. It remains to be seen on the field, but I love bringing in speed and athleticism and playmakers. Wherever they can get it, right?
Speed's big.
Yeah, whether that's on defense, offense, whatever. Because think about all the times we've talked about, man, the Bills have Josh Allen, but who's a star besides him, right? And they kind of go as Josh goes, right? Well, bring some more guys in who can be disruptors and playmakers, whether that's the guy who gets the sacks, whether that's the corner who gets a lot of picks and can man up and become one of the better cover corners, or, a wide receiver who's splashy like Diggs was. That was their other star that they really had. So I think the more you can add speed, athleticism, those traits of a playmaker, wherever it is on the field, is a good thing.
Absolutely. Let's do day 2, Andy. Here we are. 2 second-round picks right now for the Bills. No third-round picks at all going into this one. But as we know with Brandon Beane, all this stuff can change as the day goes on. But we'll just mention the 2 picks in the second round. Now you're still in position to draft an edge rusher and defensive tackle at this point.
Yeah, and wide receiver would still be out there too if the right guy fell to them, I think. But, I mean, if you're looking at best players available, even safety. We talked a lot about safety a little bit, and that seems like an awkward thing because they just invested in Cole Bishop, and they've got Taylor Rapp for a couple of more years. Hey, Nick Eamon-Warry out of South Carolina, the big beastly dude, slipped, right? So maybe that's a possibility if he continues to fall. But I still think, if one of these defensive tackles is still there, you've got Shamar Turner, Darius Alexander out of Toledo, TJ Sanders I kind of liked. I don't know that any of them really fit that necessarily big, bulking, one-technique defensive tackle, but maybe they just say, hey, just depth in general, whether that's at 3 technique or a guy who can play multiple positions. There's a couple of edge guys still out there. Mike Green, he'll probably go early in the second round out of Marshall. Big-time production at Marshall. Some off-the-field concerns there. Still some good cornerbacks. Shadur Sanders is still out there. If you
we'll
need
get to that, yeah.
Right. Edge, Jordan Birch is out there. JT Tuimalau out of Ohio State. That's another name that you'll hear. So, I mean, there's certainly players. Femi Oladejo is an edge guy that I like. Omar Norman Lott, defensive tackle Tennessee. Alfred Collins, defensive tackle Texas. So there's guys out here, and we've talked all along that, hey, if they trade back, the sweet spot might be in the second and third rounds.
Right.
So here we are. They've got 2 picks, 56 and 62 at least to start. Is this where Brandon Beane makes a move to move up? Say, sends a couple of fourth-round picks or a fourth and a fifth to somebody to move up and get a guy here in the second round, or send some picks out and move back into the third round, which they don't currently have a pick. So there's some stuff here. There's some guys that'll certainly fit the bill for what they want, and I think a lot of people will be really happy if you say, all right, I got my guy in Maxwell Hairston. That's our corner. We got, for example, Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee, defensive tackle, and then toss it up for an edge or a wide receiver with that third pick. I think a lot of people would be happy.
Yeah, 100% at this point. Do you see Beane, at the end of the day, not using both these picks where they stand in the second round?
Yeah, I definitely could see him trading up if like one of these guys they really like starts to fall. Landon Jackson, the edge out of Arkansas, I like him. He seems like a prototypical Bills type of dude. If he falls, right, like, all right, we're going to move up 10 spots in the second round, and we send away a pick to get there.
They still have 9.
Right. So I think it's certainly a possibility that there's going to be some movement today.
This is the fun part about this time of year because hope goes up. Everything is possible. It's really cool, as much as I'm not a huge draft guy or mock draft guy or whatever. Once the process starts, that's when it gets cool to me, once we know what we're going to have on our hands. Let's do a little 3 and out, Andy. We're staying with the draft. Browns trade with Jacksonville at number 2. Travis Hunter is now a Jaguar. I did not see that coming. When I saw that pop up, I'm like, oh my God, what? I felt good for Travis Hunter because I didn't want him going to the Browns seemed like a waste of time to me. But just, you see on social media, I follow a bunch of Browns accounts that Browns fans, I don't know. I just did it at some point. I don't know why.
Misery on Lake Erie.
But they were all saying the Browns are going to screw this up at number 2. Do you think they screwed it up?
So here's the interesting part. A lot of the analytics and math guys said that the Browns actually won this trade because of the haul that they got back. We got to remember, they've got to find a way to recover from Deshaun Watson. They gave up 3 first-round picks.
That's true.
To get that dude. So it looks weird because everyone loves Travis Hunter. But, like, who's throwing him the football?
That's true.
So are you wasting that guy if you're not going to have a good quarterback and you can regroup and bring in a quarterback next year and kind of reset your team if you've got a couple-of-year plan? I know Browns fans don't want to hear that.
Right.
So that's looking at it with positive glasses. On the negative side, you just gave up, like, a generational player, like a unicorn, a freak that we haven't seen in a long time, a guy who literally can play both sides of the ball. And the young GM from the Jaguars, James Gladstone, said, we do plan to play him both ways, at wide receiver and defensive back. So you lose that edge of star power and that just freakish nature of Travis Hunter. But I think the Browns have bigger issues. I don't know what they're doing, though, the whole Myles Garrett situation there. Right. So, like, okay, so now you're investing in the future. Well, why did you bring back Myles Garrett for huge money? Why did you make him the highest paid defensive player ever, right?
Spite.
to not trade him to the Bills.
Right.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but like I would love to have Travis Hunter if I'm any team.
Right.
But do they feel like, look, we're not there, so why would we take that guy if we don't have anyone to throw him the football?
See how it plays out. Shedeur Sanders not picked in the first round. Did that shock you at all, Andy?
It didn't shock me because I had heard a lot and watching the mock drafts and listening to analysts that he's probably had a second-round grade. And all it takes is one team to say, we love this guy, we fell in love with him, we're going to go get him. But I wasn't all that impressed with – he could be a great player, but I just think, like, teams thought, we'll see if we can get him in the second. Giants traded back in and got Jackson Dart, so obviously Shedeur Sanders wasn't their guy. Steelers passed on him. Saints passed on him. That these are the quarterback-needy teams.
Right. The Jackson Dart thing took me by surprise. I thought for sure Sanders was going there.
No.
And then they go Jackson Dart.
No, the more I read and heard that Dable loved Jackson Dart, so that wasn't surprising to me.
So that's on Dable now, huh?
Well, dude, talk about those guys needing to get a quarterback. They're probably on their last legs, right there. Like,
this has to hit,
right?
For those guys.
But now they've drafted the quarterback. Does that buy him even more time? Like, all right, well, let's give him at least 2 years to see if this guy's any good.
That's how I'd approach it.
Right. So
hey, we just got our quarterback. Give us
you got to let this guy grow into his job, right?
Oh, yeah.
We'll grow with him.
Rest of the AFC East, Patriots go O-line, Jets go O-line, Dolphins, as you said earlier, Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle out of Michigan.
Well, you're playing a Bills team that has beat them up in the trenches, really, in a lot of ways.
Right.
So both those teams need to regroup in the trenches. I don't think you can go wrong with the Patriots getting one of the best offensive linemen to protect Drake May. The Patriots, I'm optimistic about them.
Drake May got the crap kicked out of him last year. So offensive line, a major need for them. The Jets are just a mess. I'm sorry.
Right. I mean, great pick.
Right.
But you need somebody to protect Justin Fields, I suppose.
Justin Fields, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. And Kenneth Grant, that's him paired up with Zach Sealer. That's going to be tough, right? Because the Dolphins, they need to rebuild that defense. And Kenneth Grant's really good, I think.
All right.
Would have loved him for the Bills.
Oh, absolutely. Day 2 of the draft getting underway, second and third rounds, and then day 3 of the draft. Andy and I will be back. We'll wrap up everything from Thursday through Saturday coming up Saturday evening.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for day 2. This is the fun stuff. Not a ton of trades, so maybe we'll see more. And it's always fun with Brandon Beane because I think this is where we might see him move around.
All right. We'll see you Saturday as always. Thanks for joining us.